So now the Rebbe is going to explain what is it, this higher level of bittul, which is even higher than the bittul from the Merkava, that the Yidden attained after Matan Torah. Before Matan Torah, Yidden were also Yerusham Aviseinu, the union of Merkava, the forefather of Merkava, as explained earlier. This is the bittul of the Merkava to the Reicha, which is the higher level in bittul, and yet ultimately the bittul was even greater through Matan Torah. Well, who the idea is of the Gemara, we find in the Gemara, Amru Allah al Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, they say about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, Shaloi hiniach davar gadol v'davar katan. He did not leave without studying whether it was a big item or a small item. What are these big and small items? Davar gadol is ma'aser merkava. Big items is talking about the act of the chariot. And the davar katan, the small things, is Havayis, the Abaya v'Rava. Those are the questions and the cases of Abaya and Rava. So the Nister, the Merkava, that's the davar gadol, and the Havayis, Abaya v'Rava, that's the davar katan. So he explains in the Maimer over there in, this is Sefer HaMemorim Tov Reish Chav Tes Amud Reish Temazata Reish Tal Zayin Ve'elach from the Rebbe Marash, which this Maimer is based on. What's the reason that we call it Atam Shemaisa Merkava Nikra Davar Gadol? Why is the Maisa Merkava considered? Why do we call it something big? Ki al Yidei HaMerkava Magia HaAdam HaReichav Ala Meherkava. Because through the carriage, the person who rides on the carriage reaches to a place, Lamokoim, to a place where his own, he can't reach there. He goes through the Merkava, leads him, brings him up to a much higher place. The same thing is when we talk about the supreme chariot. Shachayis noises as hakisei ve'es ha'odom sha'al hakisei. The chayis, those are those that run the Merkava. They run the kisei. They are the Merkava. So they carry the kisei, and the person that is on the kisei, odom sha'al kisei, lebechinas, to the level of loyodom, where he is not a man. Over here we see that the Musa Kisei, the Mus Kimare Odom, that's already how godliness manifests itself in an image of a person. But the Merkava carries him to the higher place, which is a level of Loyodom, to the level of Keser, as we will explain. The main elevation to the level of Loyodom, that's on the carriage of the forefathers. When we say the fathers are the Merkava, they are the Merkava that leads to the spot, which is Loyodom, to the place where Loyodom. That's why it's a davar gadol. Merkava Atzilus. That's called the Merkava Atzilus. There's also a Merkava in the world of Biyah, which leads you to Atzilus, not to the level of Loyodom, to the level of Loyodom relative to the level of Odom of Biyah. But to the real level of Loyodom, the way it's in Keser, in Arich, that comes through the Merkava of Atzilus. Kaliyah, the Bechinas Odom. The Galiyah, the Bechinas Odom, the Bechinas Loyodom, the elevation from the level of Odom to the level of Loyodom, Shalidei Merkava de Biyah, which comes through the carriage of Biyah, Isha Odom Shala Kisei. So there it means that the Odom, which is on the Kisei, Odom de Biyah, which is the Odom of Biyah, Mis'ale ledarge shebechinas Loyodom legabe Odom de Biyah. It goes up to a level which is only considered Loyodom relative to Odom de Biat. This is considered Loy Odom. So it goes from Biat to Atzilus. But but through the Merkava of Atzilus, of the Oves, Merkava de Atzilus, Nasa Aliyah Duchinas Odom de Atzilus, over there, the elevation in the level of Odom Atzilus, Libechinas Loy Odom, to the level of not only to a level of Loy Odom relative to the lower level, but to the level of Loy Odom, which is Shalomaylo Atzilus, which is higher than Atzilus, which is the level of Arich in Kesef. That's why we call the act of the Merkava. We say that Rabbi Chaim Woloso lo yiniach dover godel, and we say that means the Maisa Merkava. Ki Odom ze'er ampin, because Odom, that's the level of Al HaMerkava. That's ze'er ampin. Those are the small face, and that's called Odom. That's in a level of small and restrictive. Through the Merkava, then you go to the level of Arich, which is Godel, big, and that's called Loy Odom, and that comes through the Merkava, and that's why the Merkava is called Dover Godel, because it reaches you from the small to the level of big. That's what the function of the Merkava does, the Mais Merkava, and that's why it's called Dover Godel. Why Vatam Shavayis the Abai Nikra Dover Godel? Why is the cases of Abai and Rava called a small thing? Even though it's a main of the oral Torah, who because the laws of the Torah are dressed up in small matters. The noise of Lozeh, in addition to the fact that the laws of Torah, which talks about the laws, that generally mitzvahs are dressed up in physical matters. But in addition to that, yesh b'chol mitzvah kama protei dinim. So every mitzvah has many detailed halachas. The inyan is chalkus protim, because that it's divided into details, tzimtzum v'hagbola, that is restricting a limitation, which is katnus. Katnus means smallness. It's limitations. It's tzimtzum v'hagbola. So based on this explanation of Gadlus is the level of Keser Arich, and Katnus is that it's dressed up in Gashmizdikya matters, which is Tzimtzum Agbola. There is a tremendous contrast over here between the Gadlus and the Katnus. So here, according to this, the difference between the act of the Merkava and the cases of Abaye and Rava dealing with Humina Kotza La Kotza is from one extreme to the other extreme. The idea of the Merkava, who I Yitzia Mebchines Hagbola Odom, it is going out from the limitation. You're going out from the Odom Lebchines Bligvul to the level of Bligvul to Loy Odom. That's Dover Godel. That's a big thing, which big means true greatness is something which is not limited. So that is the Dover Godel. But Bavai is the Bayavarova. But by the cases of Vairav, it's the opposite. Is Slapshus Rotzen Elyon. You have the will of the Supreme, which is Bligvul, Bidvar dressing up, Bidvarim Migbolim in limited matters, Dover Cotton in small matters. From the extreme high level of going out of all restrictions to the level of Bligvul, to having the Rotzen Elyon define itself in the level of limited matters, which is Dover Cotton. The Maimer contains another reason. Why are the Avayis Abai and Rava called a small matter? Ki HaTorah da'achshov hi dover cotton Legabe Panimius HaTorah Shetiskala La'osi. The Torah of now is considered a small matter relative to the Panimius HaTorah that's going to be revealed in the future. The future, the Torah, the Panimius HaTorah is going to be something major. And now the Torah that we study now, it's considered to be relatively small. That's why it's called cotton. One thing. And also, the Torah is a parable, it's a garment to the Ein Sof that is dressed in the Torah. It's only a parable, it's only a garment for the Ein Sof. That's what we call it, the parable of the Kadmon of the early one. Shehu Moshul Ulevush, that is a example and a garment to the level of the early one of the world, level to Hashem. If you talk a moshul relative to its nimshul, it's something small. So these are two additional reasons why we call Habayis Abaye V'Rava. We call Medavar cotton because A, it's small relative to the Gilui that would be La'asid Lavai, and also relative to the Ein Sof, which is in it, which what we learned in Torah is merely the garment of it. It's a moshul. The moshul relative to the nimshul, the Ein Sof, which is in it, is always considered to be a dover cotton, and that's why it's called cotton. So the Rebbe is going to explain now that before we said that it's called cotton because it's dressed up in gashmias and in details. So that doesn't make the Torah itself cotton. That is just means that it's dressed up in advarim ketanim. But according to the explanation that relative to the Ein Sof and relative to Pnimis HaTorah, it's a cotton that's describing the Torah itself. It's not just the Torah has come down into a garment. The Yesh Loimar, the Rebbe brings out now. The L'hatam Shabayis Dabayis V'Rova Nikra Dover Cotton. According to the reason that why are the case of V'Rova called over cotton? Mipnei ShaTorah Nislapshe B'Dvarim Ketanim, because the Torah dressed up in small matters. HaTorah Dover Cotton Umitzad Halavushim the Torah. So why we call it cotton? Not the Torah itself is cotton, but it's called cotton because of the garments. They're dressed up. Levushim the Torah. V'lochein Moisiv. So that's why he adds the other reason that it's called cotton. ShaTorah Da'achshav Dover Cotton L'gabe Pnimis HaTorah Shetiskala La'osid Lavai. That the Torah of now is a small next to the Pnimis HaTorah, which will be La'osid Lavai. That explains that it's not only that it dresses up in cotton, but it is cotton by definition because it's smaller than the Torah to be La'osid Lavai. And also the other explanation that Rebbe brings in the Maimer, the Gamshu Dover Cotton L'gabe Ein Sof HaMelubishba, that it's small next to the Ein Sof that is dressed in it. That's a description that the Torah itself is small. According to this reason, HaTorah Dover Cotton, when you say that it's Dover Cotton, that's also the Torah, not only in what Torah dressed up, like according to the first reason, it dresses up is small, but this is the Torah itself is small because the Torah itself is relative to the Torah of La'osilov and relative to the Oir, which is in Torah, the Oir in Sof and Luvishba, it's small, so Torah itself is cotton. So why does he have to bring the seemingly reason that the Torah dresses up in small things? Why can't he just say this reason that the Torah is actually small? Because it's not because it dresses up, because of the limitation, like he says later on. Why does he bring on the first reason? Maybe the fact that he also brings the first reason, ShaTorah and Nislapsha B'Dvarim Ketanim, that he dressed up in small items, Yesh Loimar, we can say is, as the Rebbe pointed out in the previous brackets, In this reason, when we say that the Torah is small, it dresses up in small items, Mudgesh, over here it's emphasized, Shachilu ben Abayis, the Abayim Berova, the Maisa Merkova, that the distinction between the cases of Abayim and Rova and the Maisa Merkova are so extreme, from one extreme to the other extreme, the fact that the Abayis, the Abayim Berova dress up into the Dvorim Gashmim, that points to the extreme difference between the Maisa Merkova and Abayis the boy Rabbi Chaim. But in essence, it's called a cotton because it's like a cotton relative to the Torah itself is cotton relative to the Ein Sof that's dressed up, or relative to the Torah that will be in the Skala and loss. Zion. Another explanation why we call the Torah davar cotton. So al shem oitzem bitl ha'halocha legabe Ein Sof HaMushba. That is because of the powerful subjugation of the halacha relative to the Ein Sof that is dressed up in it. It's cotton because of its subjugation to the Ein Sof, which is halacha. The Kamoy shel limuda bebitl, just like the Torah study. When you study Torah, it needs to be with bitl. Seitan l'shoini imrosacha. In a way of my tongue is just responding what you said. So I'm not saying it. It's Hashem. You're saying it. Hashem is saying it. You're non-existent. You're bitl. Like one who's responding. Somebody's reading and you're just saying the words, but it's not you. It's the one that is saying it. It's Hashem. You're just saying the words. So just like it's with the person that learns it, the halachas of Torah himself. Halachas are in a tremendous state of bittul. They are in self-negation, they're bottled to the Ein Sof that is dressed up in that. Kidl Kamon, as the Rebbe will explain, the level of bittul that exists in the halachas. Yesh loymar, the lapirush cotton kipshutoi, that when we say cotton, that it's small, talking about it small, not because it's level of bittul, as we said before. So then we're saying it's small as it relates to others. It's small because relative to others, it's small. But when we say cotton of bittul, this is cotton. That represents bittul. Cotton Hashem ha-bittul. But when we say cotton because of the bittul, is al derech kotointi b'kol hachasodim. Is similar to what we say, I have become small of kol hachasodim. Hakatnus bittul hu boi ba'atzmi. The katnus is in of itself bittul. I am bittul. That's cotton, not relative to others. So we need to understand according to the explanation that cotton represents the level of bittul, that in the level in halacha is tremendous bittul today. So and that's why we call it cotton, because it's cotton means the bittul. By the Merkava, it is also subjugated to the writer. Over there we call it Dover Gadol. Because, and it's bottle over there. That's the idea of the Merkava. And here we say that it's called the Dover Gadol. Where's the Dover Cotton? So cotton mitzvah bittul. Cotton represents the bittul, and there we say Gadol with the Merkava, even though it's level of bittul. So the point of the explanation we can say The habitl shenikra b'shem dover cotton, that bitl which we call cotton, it's not just bitl. We call it kotonti, ushu botl legamri vein b'shumaylo. That he's totally subjugated and has no advantage at all. As he writes in the holy letters that begins with the words kotonti, shemeisim atzmei kishirayim u'moiseris mamash. He puts himself as if he's extra, leftover, totally extra. Shein b'shum tzorich, has no need in him. Nobody needs him. That's the level of bittul. But that's a level of bittul when we say kotonti. But that bittul of merkava does not reach that. Merkava, he metzias, but merkava is an entity. There is an advantage to the merkava more than the rider. It gets him to places where the rider can't get. Okay, now as we said earlier, through the merkava, the rider can reach to a place which he cannot reach there on his own. That's why the Maisa merkava we don't call dover cotton. Only the Havayis Dabai Rova that have that level of bittul. And on the contrary, what the Merkava, because of this greatness that it brings it to the highest place, it's called Aruch, it's called Arich, it's called Godel. Through it, through the Merkava, you make the Aliyah, you get up to the level of Godel Arich. It's called Godel. Not only is it not called cotton because it doesn't have the full mitzias of bittul, but it's actually called Godel because you reach its mile is that it comes to Godel. But בהעלותך ה'תשכט נסלבשו בדברים קשיים, but the laws of Torah that have been dressed up in physical matter, which would be Pirush Harishon b'dover cotton, the very first explanation that it's cotton is in Gashmis. Kivon shadvorim gashmim ein lehem erech lechochmos v'ritzon yisborach hamul boshim. Since the physical matter have no value, no comparison to the wisdom and the will of a blessed will that is dressed in them, hareim b'tachas habitlum. Over there, they're total subjugated. Dover cotton. V'yidei habitl shebehilchas haTorah atzma. Through the bittul of the laws of the Torah himself, nimshach habitl gam be'odom ha'odom ha'isik b'Torah. That bittul extends also to the person who's occupied in Torah, shalimud ha'Torah shelo yiyah, so that his Torah should be in a way, ba'ifun, the tan l'shoinim resecha, my tongue responds what you said, just like one who responds after one who reads. So the person is no mitzias. How does the person become no mitzias? From the fact that the Torah itself is no mitzias, because the Dvorim Gashmim have no relevance to the Ein Sof, so they're totally bottled to the Ein Sof. That bittul of the halachas themselves extrapolate around to the person that learns them that he should become bottled, so that he's no mitzias. It's tan l'shoinim resecha. It's the Eibishter speaking. He's just responding after the koira. He's the total bit. V'zeu v'daber elikim as kol hadvorim ha'ela lemer. This is also the meaning of elikim spoke that we say in the beginning of Aseres Adibris. Hashem spoke all these words lemer. That vur b'chasidus. So Chasidus says, what does it mean? Who is this the lemer? Lamer that we should always to be in all whenever we learn Torah, that level of bittul. So it explains in Chassidus the matan Torah niten hakoyach, and matan Torah the power was given. Shalimut haTorah shala'odem yiyeh b'oifin the lamer. That how a person studies Torah should be in a way of subjugation that he's only saying over. Lachzer hadvorim shakodesh baruch oimer, to repeat the words that Hashem is saying. Tan. My tongue will respond what you say. The So what is really this level of bittul that was accomplished over here after Vaydaber Lemer to level of bittul? L'cheire, haragam lifnei matan Torah hikdimu Yisrael nasa l'nishma. Also before matan Torah the were magdim nasa l'nishma, which was the level of bittul tagdomes nasa l'nishma bittul the Baal Rotzit. Saying nasa before nishma is bittul to the Baal Rotzit, not only to be but to do the mitzvahs, but to the commander of the mitzvahs, the Baal, the master of the mitzvah, which is nasa, whatever he says. So what is the novelty in the bittul of Leimer that has become renewed, the novelty that came about relative to the bittul of Nasa v'Nishma that they had before? Bittul, Babir was explanation. Bittul da'agdomas Nasa l'Nishma yesh b'maylo. In the bittul, when you say Nasa before Nishma, there is still an advantage there. Da'agdomas Nasa l'Nishma Kabbalah Seul Malchus. That means you are, when you say before Nasa Nishma, that's accepting the yoke of heaven. There's a yoke of mitzvahs comes later, but this is the yoke of heaven. By accepting the yoke of his kingdom, he becomes a king. So there is an advantage from that to make the Eibishter into a king. This is similar to the bittul merkava. Through the subjugation of the carriage of the merkava to the rider, that way it raises and it carries and raises the reichav through this bittul. So the Nasa v'Nishma bittul carries that it brings about the melech. But by bittul, the leimer is chatish matan Torah. But the bittul of leimer that came about, renewed the matan Torah, who bittul betachlis, that's a total bittul. More than the merkava, total bittul, not even accomplishing anything. Same thing is with observance of mitzvahs. So b'matan Torah nitna koyach, that a matan Torah the power was given shekim a mitzvah shalom, that the fulfillment of mitzvahs of the person yeh betachlis habitl should be with total subjugation. Hainu, what does it mean to be with total subjugation? Shekim a mitzvah shalom yeh, the observance should be not like before matan Torah nasa nishma. Lo mipnei shel kibul olav malchus shemayim v'il mitzvahs, because he accepted upon himself the yoke of heaven and the yoke of mitzvah. That's why he's doing Elo mipnei shetzivu hakodesh baruch hu goyzer olav liyas kifi hatzivur. It is only because there's command that decrees upon him to do as he was commanded, not because he agreed to it, not because he was mekabel el malchus shemayim, not because mekabel el malchus el mitzvahs. It's a decree of the king. That's what he does. As explained with regards to the 10 saying that was in Matan Torah, and really similarly to as it connects to all commands of the Torah. They are said command, but also you will. You should and you will. Because this command is what decrees on the person in the world, and forces them came to do so. It's not because they accepted Nasa l'Nishma. It's because the dibur itself is the tzivui that also includes the osi that you do because of the tzivui. So what is the advantage whether we do the mitzvah because of Kabbalah's oil malchus shemayim in the course of mitzvahs, or because the decree tells us to do the mitzvah v'yesh loymar? So we can say that Yisrael ba'bitul da'akima mitzvahs ba'ifun zeh. The advantage in the subjugation by fulfilling mitzvahs in this way, legabe habitul the Kabbalah soil relative to the bittul by accepting the yoke. Ubishnei inyonim is in two matters. Lifisha bitl de kabolas oil hu al yidei shahu kibel olav. Kabbalas oil means that you accept that upon himself. Li is abdi shel melech malchei hamloch HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to be the servants of the king's king HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So you are the one that accepted it. He said him is one more than that. Shabitul de eved la'adonai. When we talk about a subjugation from an eved, from a servant to Adonai, and even in a case where he doesn't have to accept it, let's say he was born, even though in a case he was born a slave, so he didn't have to accept it because he was a slave. Kosher imitz yusei, that's still tied to his entity, who he is. What is he? He is an eved of another. But the bittul boyfriend and now the bittul to tzivui, it's not the person that bittul. But there can't be in the world something, an entity which is opposite of Hashem's command. So everybody does the command, but it's not his entity. But nothing in the world, there can be nothing besides the Tzivah Hashem. There can't be anything against the Tzivah Hashem. Yes. Now we're going to say, but it's a little bit in the other way as well. So far, we're saying that the level of that Matan Torah, Kiyum HaMitzvahs and Matan Torah, total bittul, a non-entity. The Rebbe says, Hagam sha'bittul the limud HaTorah v'Kiyum HaMitzvahs loifen anal. Even those studying Torah and performing mitzvahs in this way, ubittul b'tachlis is total subjugation. Nevertheless, Kivon she Yisrael v'kudsha b'richu kulu chad, since the Yidden and Hashem are really one, so therefore, l'chein bittul zeh eino shoylu les mitziyuso. So that subjugation does not really negate their existence. Adrabah, zeh gufahu mitziyuso. That becomes their entity. That non-entity is their entity. That's what they are. Of not being, because we're one with Hashem. You keep my ner, I will guard your ner. Even though that ani mishameres nercha, who showed them boldly tachlis habitl, that the person comes to the ultimate bitl, shalamai lagami bitl the merkava, which is even higher of the bitl of the merkava. As we said, because the mitzvahs after Matan Torah, it's even a higher level than Masav and Ishma, and higher than the bittul of the Merkava, which comes from the Ovis. But that does not negate his mitzius. That he guards. It means that becomes your real mitzius. Rashi explains on Loischas and Nedus, flame goes up on its own. The elevation of the souls. Going up of the lamps, the souls. They come to total subjugation. It's in a way it's still connected to the nidus. The flame goes up by itself. There's still the flame there. That means that the limud Torah observance of mitzvahs is subjugation. Together with that, with energy, with vitality, and with joy. Since joy breaks through all boundaries, Torah v'simcha shel mitzvah, through the Torah simcha and the simcha of mitzvah, nimshachim kol ha'inyonim haruchnim v'agashmim b'li ha'agbolos, all the physical and the spiritual and the physical without any agbolos, because it's done with simcha and it doesn't take away from their entity. It's chadim kuchabrichu and becomes shalheves eilam me'elahu.